10 Ways to Be More Castable. Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Sam Christensen Studios here in Atlanta, Georgia. Be sure to check out the show notes below for links to our Atlanta-based website as well as the LA-based website. And now on to our topic. 10 Ways to Be More Castable. By the way, this is the setup that we have when we do Zoom workshops for the Sam Christensen image process. So I thought it'd be apropos to kind of do today's video with this fake backdrop. It's just a blue screen. See? Now, I won't bury the lead. This video is about the Sam Christensen image process. In fact, I could have titled it 10 Benefits of the Sam Christensen Image Process, but we already have a video titled that on our YouTube page for Sam Christensen, so I came up with a different title. Anyway, here are the 10 ways to be more castable. Learn how casting sees you. This first point is of utmost importance, and I can phrase it to you this way. If you were doing a biopic of your own life and you sent the script out to break down services, how would the breakdown for your character, for you, the real life you, how would that be written on paper? What adjectives would be used to describe you? That is essentially, in a nutshell, how casting or how the world sees you, how they perceive you. We all have an intuition, of course, because, we see how people react, so we think we know how the world sees us. But we also have this internal perception of ourselves that sometimes is at odds with how the external world sees us. It's why some actors in their early careers, they've been sort of filled with the notion that they can be a chameleon and play any role ever made. And while that might be true on stage, in TV and film, it's a lot less so. You cannot be that ultimate chameleon that maybe you were thought to believe in those high school acting classes or even those college classes or other classes that you took. So you need to know what roles are your bestsellers and how you are being perceived by casting, especially if you are early in your career. So you need to develop this essentially vocabulary of how you're perceived so that if you were to write your own breakdown of yourself, you would know those top 3 adjectives or 10 or 20 adjectives that you would use to describe yourself and that not only you would agree with, but the entire world would agree with as well. And once you do understand how the world, or more specifically how casting sees you, it makes you more castable. Because if you're trying to go against the grain, if I'm trying to get my agents to submit me for rock star, good looks, lead roles, then my agent's going to have an awkward conversation with me at some point. And maybe even a combative conversation if I just won't accept the fact that I'm not really seen that way by casting. So you really need to understand how casting sees you even before you can move on to the other 9 points that we're going to talk about in this video. Learn why casting sees you that way. Now, if you thought the first point was important, the how casting perceives you, the why is even more important for a couple reasons. One, for your career and for your castability, but 2, also just for your own mental health. Because if the world perceives me as quiet and intimidating, spoiler alert, the world perceives me that way. And if I don't understand why I'm being perceived that way, then not only do I not want my agents submitting me for those roles, but then I'm going to resent when I'm actually requested, and I won't really want to play those characters. Because in my life, in my social life, I don't want to be seen as intimidating. That's a liability when I'm trying to make new friends or when I'm trying to schmooze at industry functions. But once I came to an understanding of why I was perceived almost universally by people as intimidating, especially if I'm quiet, especially if you meet me for the first time as this quiet figure across the room, then yes, you will be intimidated by me. It's almost a certainty. Once I understood the why of that, it gave me so much peace. And when you have that peace of mind, then you can start to understand even more about yourself and why you are drawn to certain characters from casting's point of view. And it just sort of snowballs from there, this ability to understand yourself and to actually get excited about something that might have offended me prior to taking the Sam Christensen workshop. Now it's something like, no, I love playing those roles because I understand that I uniquely get perceived that way. And what it does ultimately is something that might have had control over me because I didn't understand the why. Now I have control over it because I've done the work. And I know why people perceive me that way. And so now I am in control of it. I can sort of, like an audio mixing board, I can slide up some of those qualities about myself and maybe dim some of the other ones. Now I'm mixing lighting metaphors with audio metaphors, but that's okay. But it allows me to be in more control because in that metaphor of the mixing board, I now have labels for each of those channels. And I know, oh, wow, I didn't realize my intimidation slider was all the way up to 11. I might want to dial that back. And so I have now this control over these things. And it's not about me putting a facade forward or being fake. It's about just understanding the things you already perceive about me and leaning into those things and not trying to cover them up or obscure them the way most of us do for most of our lives. Less anxiety and desperation. So once you understand the how and the why, it can give you less anxiety and desperation. Because trust me, running a taping service, that can even show through on a self-tape. When an actor is either just so nervous or has filled with so much anxiety or desperation to book the role. And that, of course, is a huge liability. So once you understand this how and this why of casting in the world and how you're being perceived and why you're being perceived that way, then it allows you to walk into that in-person callback or to show up on that Zoom callback or even just to walk into that self-taped environment and have less anxiety and desperation because now you're resting in who you are. You understand who you are. And that's attractive to those buyers, those decision makers who are going to be watching your performance. And by the way, you'll always have nerves. That's something that won't necessarily go away because nerves just mean you care. And if those still become overwhelming, well, then maybe you investigate other means of mitigating those feelings by yoga or meditation or other practices. And we highly encourage that. But the Sam Christensen process and the results that you get will be just another tool to lowering some of those fears and anxieties and those feelings of desperation because you will understand who you are and you'll be able to rest and be content and at peace in who you are. And that's powerful. Confidence. With this newfound knowledge of who you are and why you're being perceived the way you are, you can walk into a casting situation, whether it's in person, Zoom, or even a self-tape. When you have confidence in who you are because of what you bring to the table and this understanding that this is a collaborative environment, that there is no perfect example of this role that I'm trying to live into, that I'm trying to approximate, then instead I'm just trying to bring myself, my understanding of who I am and these essences and qualities to the role, and you are confident in that and confident in who you are, wow, that is attractive because, spoiler alert, those decision makers might be more nervous than you are. Think about it. If it's a pilot that you're auditioning for and the showrunner is either watching your tape or is there in the room with you because maybe it's a callback or a second callback, they have millions of dollars on the line that they have been entrusted with by the studio or the network to create this show that isn't proved yet. It's only existed in script form. That person is nervous. That person doesn't know if your character is going to work, if the scene is going to work, if the entire show is going to work. So if you show up with this confidence, not just an ease of who you are, but the confidence in who you are and how you will contribute to this project, you give them that sigh of relief, and man, does that make you more castable. Because then casting sees that, and they want to bring you in for more auditions because they see the way you command the room or command that screen in such a confident way, and that will just feed upon itself and snowball into more and more opportunities for you. Now, what will help boost that confidence is our next point that makes you more castable, and that is your signature performance. Now, this is first dependent on your foundation of training. And just like with handwriting, because I mentioned signature performance, when you learn handwriting, you're first asked to copy exactly what you saw up on that board, either on the chalkboard or the whiteboard or that white strip above the chalkboard. And you had to perfectly, to the best you could, approximate what an E looks like, a lowercase e, what a Z looks like. And then you get into cursive, and again, you're trying to approximate exactly what it looks like. Just like if you were learning an instrument or learning sports, you're first trying to emulate this thing perfectly. Martial arts. And in art, maybe a little less so, but a lot of acting teachers will start with sort of the model of what you're supposed to be doing, and they might critique you very specifically. But eventually, in all of these endeavors, arts, sports, doesn't matter, you're eventually trying to handwriting, find your own way of doing it. All of us now have unique handwriting now that we're in our adult years. It's why there are handwriting experts that can determine whether these two samples of writing are from the same person, because your handwriting has become so unique, so ingrained with who you are. Likewise, your style of acting, the way you express yourself, whether you realize it or not, is going to develop its own signature style. And we call that your signature performance as part of the Sam Christensen process. And we're really interested in that, because once an actor finds that and sort of hones in on that, it's building off of all these other points, and it's starting to create this picture of a person who is self-sufficient, who is still an artist and still expressing themselves and still wants to collaborate, but is also very secure in their contribution to that overall collaborative experience. Now, we go into more depth within the actual Sam Christensen process about this idea of the signature performance. And if you don't know what your signature performance is, then it can cause a lot of flailing in your self-tapes or in your auditions, because, again, you're trying to approximate what you think they want instead of going, oh, my way of doing intimidation is this. And then you do that thing. Great headshots. You got to have great headshots, because if your headshot doesn't represent who you are, who that person is that shows up on screen, oh gosh, everyone in this industry hates that. That is a huge pet peeve of everyone. Casting directors, agents, managers, directors, me. We all don't like a headshot to not match the experience of you in person. Think of the headshot as it's a still frame, but it's the movie poster. It's the trailer for what I'm going to experience when I meet you in person. So if that headshot is not an accurate representation of what I'm going to meet when you show up on screen or when you come into my casting room, if I were a casting director, then it's a letdown, and it might even be a complete waste of time, because I might have been picking up on something in that headshot that didn't walk through the door. And that might have been the whole reason I called you in, was based on this quality. Now, sometimes that quality is because the photo was 10 years ago and you're still using it. So, of course, that's an issue. But just even these qualities or essences of who you are, if you don't know how to capture that in a photo session, then that headshot actually becomes a liability instead of a tool in your arsenal as an actor. Now, a lot of actors, most actors, they go to a headshot session and they expect a photographer to handle all of that, right? Isn't it their job to get amazing shots? Isn't that what I'm paying for? And then you're hoping that that awesome lighting and the wardrobe and the makeup and the way you're being posed and whatever, right? You're expecting the photographer to be in charge of all that. But what they can't be responsible for is whether you show up, whether you are there present, and whether you understand, again, the why and the how you're being perceived by the world, so that you can actually let that come out in these shots. In fact, that's the entire reason initially that Sam created this process. He was trying to help actors get better headshots. And then it just grew into so much more over the course of 30 years. I know for me personally, after I took it in 2011, not only did I take the best headshots at my next session, I've continued to take the best headshots. Every time I go to a session, regardless of the photographer, I feel good about what I did, what I brought to the table, and that is myself. I've been happy with those shots every single time. And so you can too. Changing your look. This is a result of the process that might happen depending on whether or not your current insides match your current outsides. And let me use Brooke, my amazingly talented, beautiful wife, as an example. She took the process back in 2011. She had longer hair at the time. But inside, she always felt like a short-haired girl. And she just didn't have that sort of catalyst, the thing to kind of push her over the edge to say, you know what, I'm going to chop all my hair off. After she took the process, though, it suddenly dawned on her, like, yes, okay, I feel convicted now of cutting my hair. And so she did. And she started booking more. And it's not because of the short hair by itself, but it's because the insides that had always been there now suddenly matched the outsides. The outside was now amplifying this thing that was already true inside. And that combined made her more confident, which of course exuded out of her into the camera lens. And she just saw more results when she allowed her outsides to start matching her insides. It means you might actually change your wardrobe or discover a more personalized style with your wardrobe. And you might change your hair or your style of makeup, etc. Social media. Another thing that will make you more castable in a more subtle way, and also as a result of taking the Sam Christensen process, is understanding how to approach social media. First of all, you will develop an idea of how to be consistent across all of your social media and how to put forth, if you get, again, you want to call it a brand or a style or a unique identity, so that if a casting director or someone in the industry were to stumble across your Instagram, it wouldn't feel vastly different than the person they discovered on Facebook or on TikTok, and so forth. If your social media profiles are public, well, then they're public. And if you feel very convicted about certain issues, then more power to you. Just understand that it might cost you not only short-term jobs, but it might cost you long-term relationships in the industry. That's sort of a nuanced tip about not necessarily being more castable, but just making sure you don't not get cast because of your social media. Editing your reel. Now, one of the things that to be more castable that you need to understand about your reel is that it's not just a library of your work. You need to curate your demo reel, assuming you have enough footage to create one and to be able to pick and choose. And if you're not at that place, that's fine. No judgment. A lot of cast directors will say no reel is better than a bad reel. But again, assuming that you've got footage for your reel, it's not necessarily about putting everything in there. It's about curating it so that you are telling a story of how you want to be cast in the future, how you should be seen. So don't think of your reel as something that is just a complete representation of your entire life's work, but instead picking and choosing those things that showcase you in a way that teaches those buyers how to look at you, how to cast you in the future. And so if you end up with a great reel, it becomes a very useful tool that can make you more castable. Because yes, there are times when casting is either moving so fast or you have achieved a certain level where you can just submit your reel instead of auditioning for the script they provided, and the reel is enough to book you. So it becomes a very useful asset that can make you more castable. Realize that this industry, from an acting standpoint, is not a competition. At least not in the way you're probably thinking of it right now. Sure, sometimes people book things for unfair reasons, but I would argue that at least I probably don't want to work with those people. So I don't care that I missed out on those opportunities. But if the decision makers are truly looking for the right actor for the role, then the right actor will be cast every time. And by right, I don't mean the one who made the boldest choices. It's the person who fits. They are the puzzle piece that fits into this giant tapestry, as I mix my metaphors, that is the finished product. And it is so often down to things that you couldn't change about yourself if you tried. So that even if someone who is going out for the same role as you, who's the same age range and the same ethnicity, if they book the role, it doesn't mean that they did something that you could have done and that you could have done better to get the role instead of them. No. That was their role. Because from that creative standpoint, when they looked at all the pieces together, that person fit into that tapestry, right? That puzzle better than you did. And that's not a slight on you. It is not an insult. And again, it's not something you could have changed. So when you start looking at it from that perspective, it's not a competition, is it? Then that takes one of those things off the table that is giving you so much angst or consternation in this industry, and it's a powerful one. So please don't look at this as a competition, because it's not. Whew. Okay, so those were 10 ways to be more castable / benefits of the Sam Christensen process. If you have found those intriguing and are by chance still watching this video, then again, I invite you to click on the links in the description below to learn more about the process, either hosted by Brooke and myself here in Atlanta, Georgia. We also have a completely virtual option that is hosted by Ken Cortland in LA. Well, he was Sam's business partner who developed this process over the course of 30 years. So you're getting it straight from the source if you take it from him. Again, he only offers it virtually. We offer it both in person and virtual. You can find dates and whatnot on our website. You can also find out if we're doing a free preview anytime soon, where you can jump on a Zoom call with us and hear us give you more information about how the actual process is broken down. And you can ask questions, as many as you want, and we give you as much information as we can in basically a 2-hour time frame. That's it for now, and just remember, be yourself.